How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be reacting to a video by Joe Scott. I love this dude's channel. It used to be called Answers with Joe, but then he changed it to Joe Scott. The original video is Atlantropa, sorry. The insane plan to dam the Mediterranean. Right here is where they're going to put the dam, evidently, if they do it. I don't know if they're actually going to do it or if it's just proposed, right? So I'm assuming that would actually make this turn into fresh water eventually, kind of like the Zuiderzee in the Netherlands. When they dammed that, eventually it turned into fresh water, which kind of messed up some marine life, or so I've heard. But I'm excited about doing this reaction because I've been watching this guy's channel for such a long time. And finally, I just randomly came across this video and I'm like, wait a minute, that's completely relevant to react to on my channel. So you guys get to see me watch this Joe Scott video. We're going to learn together, guys. As always, the link's in the video description down below, so go check that out. I'm going to hit like on this. And yeah, let's get into it.
That's weird, right? The Mediterranean Sea is listed by Wikipedia as the 10th largest sea in the world, which doesn't sound that impressive, but it's the only one almost completely enclosed by land. Except for one tiny gap.
Yep.
Which didn't used to be a gap at all, but we'll get to that later. There are 15 countries bordering the Mediterranean, with 59 cities along the coastline hosting a total population of over 150 million people. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world, and was the birthplace of some of the earliest, most powerful civilizations in human history.
Now, isn't that that spot where it's open to the ocean, isn't that where I think there's like some like pillars of Hercules there, right? And there used to be a town or village or city or something called Herculaneum. I believe that's where that spot is.
But all those places and all those people are now under threat. Rising sea levels are already causing billions of dollars of damage to ports around the Mediterranean, forcing some cities like Venice to take desperate measures like the Meuse Dam project that took 30 years to build, cost 8 billion euro, and it still might not work. But there is
Venice, that is somewhere it'd be super cool to travel. It's I'm pretty sure Venice is just nothing but water. Like you can only get around by boat pretty much.
one potential solution. One mega project that could not just save Venice, but all the cities along the Mediterranean coast, and at the same time provide billions of kilowatts of clean energy to both Europe and Africa. Damn it.
Okay, yeah.
No, that's the solution. Damn the Mediterranean.
I love his humor. Yeah, so if you guys haven't came across Joe Scott's channel yet, I highly recommend it. He covers all sorts of topics. And if you're somehow watching Joe, shout out to you, man. I love your channel. Been watching it for years.
It's such a simple solution, right? Why hasn't anybody thought of this? Well, actually, people have for quite some time, actually. A lot of people have done a lot of work on this idea. But it's actually a lot more difficult than it sounds. But all that difficulty might be worth it. I mean, like I mentioned, all the cities along the Mediterranean coast, there are also 49 UNESCO World Heritage Sites at risk. Places like Alexandria, Carthage, and Delos, Greece. Yeah, according to studies, 37 sites could be swamped by a centennial flood and 42 could be damaged by coastal erosion. If, you care more about that than people. But if you do care about present cities and the people who live there, well, there's bad news there too. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change put it this way in a recent report, quote, "In the absence of adaptation, more intense and frequent extreme sea level events, together with trends in coastal development, will increase expected annual flood damages by 2 to 3 orders of magnitude by 2100.
Jeez.
Hundreds of thousands, even millions of people could be displaced from their homes, leading to mass migrations. Major industries could be disrupted, like tourism and agriculture."
Okay, so back to what I was saying about it damaging the marine life. I guess people are more important, so save the people, not the fish, right?
In fact, farmers along the Nile Delta have already seen crops ruined by encroaching seawater. Spanish rice is under threat, as well as crops in Tunisia. Now, I would love to tell you that local adaptation programs will succeed and no one will have to move, but historically, things haven't really worked out that way. There was a study in June 2023 that looked at adaptation programs in Italy, Greece, and Spain, and it suggested that, yeah, we are nowhere near being prepared, partly because the plans keep getting pushed back on. The fact is, some people just don't see the expenses worth it if the threat is too general. And then, of course, there's the misalignment of interest when it comes to politicians.
So he was saying like the free energy, right? So they can get energy from the dam. That would actually help Africa out quite a bit. I mean, Africa is a poorer continent, and I'm sure the electricity would probably be cheaper. And especially if whatever that country is on the other side of Spain, um, whatever the African country is, they would probably split the profits, right? If there's a dam connected to their land, Spain would get half the profits, the country in Africa would get the other half, I would assume. But then again, Africa's poorer, so would they have the money to actually chip in on it? Probably not. Spain would probably foot more of the bill unless other countries around the Mediterranean chip in. I don't know how that would actually work. He may get to it here soon.
As one Italian stakeholder put it, the local politicians think only of the next tourist season. Where have I heard that?
But those beaches will be open for this weekend.
Like, the big phrase amongst environmentalists going back to the 70s is think global, act local, but unfortunately, local adaptation programs have been spotty at best, which is leading some people to ask if we need some bigger ideas. So,
Perhaps.
here's the big damn idea. What if instead of all the cities pumping billions of dollars into seawalls and dams and pumps, all mega projects in their own right, what if we use that one little quirk of the Mediterranean geography to just protect all of them at the same time? I mean, just look at the Strait of Gibraltar. It's practically begging to be dammed. The Strait of Gibraltar, or as I called it in a previous video, the place where Europe and Africa make out. This is literally a 13-kilometer, 8-mile gap separating the two continents.
That's not that big. That's not that big at all in the grand scope of things.
I could run further than that. Not well, but I could do it. So, I mean, why not? I mean, that would work, right? Actually, we know that would work because it's happened before. So yeah, I talked about this in my Silurian hypothesis video a while back. But yeah, roughly about 5 million years ago, the Strait of Gibraltar closed up, possibly due to lower sea levels during an ice age. This caused the Mediterranean Sea to dry up into a handful of small, extremely salty lakes for a few million years. This became known as the Messinian salinity crisis, which, by the way, ended in the most colossal flood probably in the history of planet Earth. Because when that water came through the dam, it wasn't like this long-term event. The Mediterranean Sea filled up literally in a matter of months. They called it the Zanclean Flood, and everything about it is insane. It created mile-high waterfalls in some places.
Jeez.
Literally, ocean levels around the world fell because of it. Like, for perspective, it would be like if a dam broke in August and the entire United States flooded with water. Like, that's what it would be like. Anyway, I could go on about the Zanclean Flood because it was absolutely insane. But the point is, a dam could work, and people have been talking about it for a long time.
I wonder if he did a video about the Zanclean flood. Like, I like this guy's channel, and most of it's not relevant for me to react to because, like, he'll do stuff about sci-fi stuff, and which, I mean, if you guys want to see that sort of thing, let me know in the comments down below. I would definitely be interested in reacting to some, like, out there conspiracy theories or sci-fi alien kind of stuff, you know what I mean? As of right now, it's not really the main topic of what I've been reacting to on the channel. But like I said, I seen this video and it just relevant. Very relevant.
Actually, for all the nerds out there, my writer Ryan found a Star Trek connection to this whole thing. Yeah, apparently in the novelization of Star Trek the Motion Picture, Kirk visits a Starfleet communication outpost on the Dam of Gibraltar at the power station there. So that was in 1979, so this goes back a little ways.
Well, we all know Star Trek kind of predicts the future. Like, half their technology we have now. You know what I mean?
Deep cut there. Yeah, this idea was actually proposed for real in 1997 by an American geologist named R.G. Johnson. And his concern was actually the rising salinity level of the Mediterranean Sea since the building of the Aswan High Dam in Egypt. That's because it had been diverting fresh water from the Mediterranean for 29 years, and he was worried that the salinity would change and then filter out into the Atlantic Ocean, and that could mess with the thermohaline cycle and maybe lead to another ice age. Obviously that didn't happen, but that was a concern at the time, and his solution was, damn it.
Well, it's a good thing we didn't go through another ice age because I don't like being cold, guys.
In Johnson's paper, he said, quote, Aswan High Dam's effect on Mediterranean salinity will trigger glaciation much more quickly than would CO2 warming alone. He added that the remedial dam should be built quickly while petroleum supplies are still plentiful and society is stable. Sounds like Mr. Johnson had a touch of the old existential dread. Good stuff. He never gives a dollar amount in his paper, but he does acknowledge that it would be expensive, saying that the dam's total would value, quote, 420 times that of the Great Pyramid. My guy, how did you come up with that?
Right?
Why? Something tells me he just tried to find something that would equate to 420. A different proposal from another group put the price at 4 billion euros, saying the dam was, quote, viable and easy to build.
Well, the Dutch built the dam where was it the Zuiderzee? I think that's what it's called. Get the Dutch in there to do it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, 4 billion euro is kind of ridiculous when you consider that the Meuse Dam around Venice cost twice that much. I mean, hell, China's Three Gorges Dam cost 10 times more than that.
Jeez.
But I mean, even if it cost as much as those, even more than those, so many people could benefit from it that surely between all of the countries that border the Mediterranean, there should be enough money to do this, right? I mean, it could benefit in a lot of other ways as well. For example, the hydropower from the dam would be enormous. Like that is a whole lot of cheap baseload energy that could feed into both continents. Like, just some quick back-of-the-napkin math here. The Three Gorges Dam generated over 103 billion kilowatt hours in 2021. That dam is 2.3 kilometers long. The Strait of Gibraltar is 5 times bigger than that. Multiply 103 billion by 5 and you get 515 billion kilowatt hours. That is enough electricity to power all of Spain and Morocco, plus Portugal, Algeria, Greece, Israel, and Denmark. Now that's
okay, yeah, that's a lot of power.
actually a very simple estimate. The actual amount could be a lot less than that, or it could be more than that. Who knows? I mean, either way, whoever sells that electricity would stand to make some serious stacks of cheddar. Plus, the infrastructure of the tunnel would allow for roads and tunnels to connect the two continents.
Yep.
I mean, factor in things like tourism and trade, and it's pretty clear that the entire Mediterranean region would benefit.
Africa alone would benefit quite a bit from that.
So, why haven't we done this? For one thing, it's not clear who would build, operate, and protect this thing. Now, the obvious candidates are Spain and Morocco, because those are the two countries
Morocco, that's the one that's right there.
that they touch, but they've actually tried to get a bridge or a tunnel made for years. And while their relationship has been good traditionally, there have been some problems lately, mostly around illegal immigration. Yeah, in June 2022, a clash between migrants and immigration officials resulted in a human stampede that killed 23 people. The previous year, they had another dust-up when 6,000 immigrants managed to swim from a beach in Morocco to a Spanish city on the Moroccan coast. So the political climate might not be great. Probably not insurmountable, but not great. What might be insurmountable is just the physical challenge of building this thing. Yeah, the Gibraltar Dam is deceptively simple looking. Yeah, that gap is short. It's only 13 kilometers wide, but the strait is extremely deep, up to 900 meters in some places.
Now, I wonder if that's deeper than the dam that they built in the Netherlands or the one in China.
Now, for contrast, the deepest bridge on Earth is the Padma Bridge in Bangladesh, and it only goes down 127 meters.
Okay.
And that's just a bridge on top of concrete piles. It's not like a dam that needs to be a solid structure all the way down. Now, oil rigs do operate at considerably deeper depths than 900 meters, so we can build that deep, but yeah, we've never built anything on this kind of scale. This would definitely qualify as a mega project.
Okay,
there are
yeah,
other
yeah.
issues too, like, all the stuff in the ocean. Yeah, the Mediterranean and the Atlantic are kind of a shared ecosystem with literally like hundreds of species that migrate in and out every year.
Oh.
Like one easy example is bluefin tuna. Not only do they migrate into the Mediterranean every year, they're also followed by orcas that feed on them. There's also whales that feed on giant squid that migrate into the strait, so there's just knock-on effects of this kind of thing.
Couldn't they leave the bottom of it kind of have holes in it so that the fish can swim through, but keep the top part of it solid so that the water would be held back? I don't know if that would work, but that's a thought.
And again, we can see an example of this from the Three Gorges Dam. In the first few years that it was built, the population of carp in the rivers dropped to an all-time low. So in 2009, conservationists worked with officials to develop what they called environmental flow, which would basically open up parts of the dam to let the carp move more freely, and it worked. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was just... Yeah, I didn't know like the scientific or technical term for it, but that's what I'm talking about.
The number of carp has gone back to previous levels since then. The same can't be said for the Yangtze River dolphin. They were already an endangered species before the dam was built, but the dam pretty much finished the job. They were basically declared extinct in 2006.
Oh, that
and here's the
sucks.
thing, the bluefin tuna I was just talking about, yeah, they're not really doing so hot either. Yeah, their numbers plummeted in the early 2000s due to massive overfishing, and a whole bunch of laws and bans were imposed, including 5 years of strict quotas in the fishing industry. And this helps. Their numbers aren't quite so dire anymore, but they're still not fully recovered. So they did ease some of the quotas in the recent years. So it's still up in the air whether the numbers will go back down. Would the tuna survive a damming? What about the whales that follow them and the squids I was talking about and the kraken for that matter? I mean, somehow the Gibraltar Dam would need to allow for environmental flow.
Yeah.
And one more thing it's worth talking about is that a dam of this size and of this much importance would also be like a target for terrorists. So protecting it would be a great expense to whoever is building it.
I didn't even think about that aspect of it. Yeah. Yeah. And also with the environmental flow, like leaving holes in the bottom that the fish can swim through, I guess that would keep it from turning into a freshwater sea. That would keep the salinity levels up.
I mean, blowing up a dam that would drown dozens of cities around the Mediterranean, that's some James Bond villain shit right there. And actually, interestingly, it was a James Bond villain that had the idea to build a dam there in the first place.
Really?
I mean, obviously he wasn't an actual James Bond villain, but I mean, come on. This Mike Myers character in real life was Hermann Sorgel. He was an architect from Germany, and in the late 1920s, he proposed a dam that would lower sea levels in the Mediterranean so far that it would basically create a whole new country for Germany to control. A country he named Atlantropa. Yeah,
Okay.
the Nazis weren't content with just taking over all of Europe. They wanted to create whole new countries to take over. Except, the thing is, and I know this is probably the most unrealistic thing that I'm going to say in this entire video, Colonel Klink here actually wasn't a Nazi. But yeah, according to what I read in the research, he didn't propose this for the glory of the fatherland. He was a pacifist. He did it to promote peace in Europe.
Nice.
He thought that the dam could provide 50% of Europe's power needs, reducing the potential for resource wars. And he also thought that the extra land could be, farms to prevent food shortages in the future. And the idea wasn't to create a whole new country, despite the fact that he called it Atlantropa. It actually was just going to reduce the Mediterranean by 200 meters, which would have expanded land significantly in some places, like Italy and the Levant, other places not so much. He also had plans to use the water to irrigate the Sahara and turn it into arable productive land.
Interesting thing about the Sahara, the sand and the dust from the Sahara actually gets kicked up into the atmosphere, travels across the Atlantic, and gets dumped in, I believe, the Amazon. Very interesting. But the Sahara contributes to some of the. It does something for the Amazon. I don't know, remember, but the ecosystem, like it helps the Amazon's ecosystem. It's interesting.
Also, to be fair, the northern coast of Morocco was a Spanish protectorate in the 1920s and 30s, so it might have made a bit more political sense back then than it would today. Now, unfortunately, even though he wasn't a Nazi, the people who were running Germany at the time very much were Nazis, and they weren't really all that interested in peaceful solutions. But Sorgel never gave up. He continued promoting Atlantropa until his death in 1952, which he actually died pretty young. He got hit by a car.
Sucks.
So, yeah, that happened. In fact, he made a film in 1951 animating the recession of the Mediterranean. You can see how thick Italy would have gotten. This idea, by the way, it's been referenced in books and shows like The Man in the High Castle. Obviously, it's a Nazi plan in that book, which Sorgel might not have appreciated. Also, Cody Franklin over at the Alternate History Hub YouTube channel, he wrote a book around the idea called the Atlantropa Articles. That's pretty cool. Anyway, the idea
cool
of
name.
damming the Mediterranean is crazy for sure. I mean, we're talking about connecting two continents that are frustratingly close to connecting already, but still. You know what was also a crazy idea, though? Separating two continents that are frustratingly connected, like we did with the Panama Canal. I covered the Panama Canal in a different video, which is definitely worth watching, but if you haven't, did you know it took 33 years to open that thing?
Jeez.
There were multiple attempts to build it that failed, including one by Gustav Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower guy. In those failed attempts, 800,000 investors are thought to have lost their savings, and by the time the canal was open, 27,000 workers died. Yeah,
I bet there was a lot of people that was pissed.
I made a point in my video that the Panama Canal might be the deadliest strip of land in the world in terms of bodies per mile or kilometer, whatever. There were some disagreements about that in the comments of that video, but that doesn't really mean anything. Hey, watch
There's always going to be disagreements in the comment sections, guys. You know about that. You're probably getting ready to drop one of them comments right now.
This. Puppies are cute. People are fighting over that now.
Yeah, they are.
Anyway, regardless of how accurate that statement is, it was a ridiculously deadly project that also involved a guerrilla war in Colombia and altogether cost what today would be around $15 billion, adjusted for inflation. And all of that was done, why? Commerce, baby! They didn't build the Panama Canal to save any cities. They didn't do it to reduce suffering. They did it to make it easier to ship goods around the world.
Yeah.
They did it to save companies money. I mean, considering that there are multiple cities under threat in the Mediterranean, many of them proposing individual dams and mitigation projects that will each cost billions of dollars. Well, it won't make any money for shareholders, so it'll probably never happen, will it?
Oh,
I mean,
man.
if we were in the doing the right thing business, we wouldn't be in this spot in the first place, would we?
Right.
This soapbox is tall. But are you ready to have your mind really blown? Because the Gibraltar Dam idea, which is not seriously being considered right now, isn't the biggest dam being proposed.
Really?
A Dutch oceanographer has suggested enclosing the entire North Sea.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
The trick would be to actually do 2 dams. The longest would span an incredible 475 kilometers to connect Scotland and Norway. The other, between France and England, will be a much more modest 160 kilometers. That's only 2 Panama Canals long. The Northern European Enclosure Dam, or NEED as it's being called, will cost at least $250 billion.
Jeez.
So who's going to pay for that? The proposal suggests
me.
that it could be paid for if the 14 countries with land on the North Sea kick in 0.1% of their total GDP for the next 20 years. Which, I mean, doesn't sound that unreasonable when you put it like that. But will NEED actually happen? Well, the name is no accident. The authors of the proposal argue that a large collective effort like NEED might be, cheaper and more effective than alternative solutions. Those include managed migrations and country-by-country protection efforts. Kind of the same reasoning behind the Gibraltar Dam idea. Both of these would be mega projects at a scale we've never tackled before.
Yeah, that's insane. And do you think it'll actually happen, guys? Either one of them, but more specifically the North Sea one. I don't know. I don't see it. That's so much money.
But then again, climate change is a problem on a scale that we've never really tackled before. It's only expensive when you don't consider the alternative. I mean, we found a way to get the Panama Canal done, and frankly, we've been reaping the benefits ever since. We might feel the same way about these projects in the future. So, some of you might have noticed I haven't really talked about climate change problems on the channel as much lately, and that's mostly because I feel like the doom and gloom around it can be kind of self-defeating. I mean, we keep hearing about mental health issues in the younger generation these days. I'm sure social media has a lot to do with it, but also being constantly reminded about a massive existential threat that will affect the world in their lifetimes, I'm sure that doesn't help.
Nope.
And that's kind of why I like talking about mega projects like this. At least it's something actionable. At least it's something that we can do and not just, doom and gloom all the time.
Right.
Like, I might point to my global thermostat video where I talk about the possibility of all the countries in the world pitching in a tiny percent of GDP every year for a few decades to, regulate CO2 levels, kind of like what they're suggesting on the NEED Dam project. But ultimately, will it work?
Who knows?
I'll let you guys argue about this down below. If you can stop arguing about my puppies comment. One thing you can definitely stop arguing about is what's the best way to shave, thanks to today's sponsor, Henson Shaving. Guys, sometimes there's a good segue and sometimes there's not. I don't know what to tell you.
So that's the end of that video. The rest of it's just a sponsor bit. I'm going to see if there's any comments on this. Did anybody comment about those puppies? I know that shouldn't be the takeaway here, but... It says technical note, your spoken audio has a high-pitched background noise around. Huh. I didn't notice it. Lowering water levels in the Mediterranean could have significant unintended consequences for environmental conditions around the sea and possibly beyond it. You just have to look at what is happening with the disappearing Aral Sea and the negative effects on precipitation in the region. I don't know where the Aral Sea is. This may also create a serious salinity problem. Right now, Atlantic waters enters the Mediterranean at the surface, and dense high salinity water exists at the bottom of the strait. Okay, yeah. If the strait were blocked by a hydro dam, the entering water would be drastically reduced, but the exiting high salinity water would completely stop. That combined with surface evaporation would steadily increase the salinity of the Mediterranean until it would be like the Dead Sea. Not good. Yeah, that is true. I didn't even think about that because the bottom would have to be open for the environmental flow that he was talking about. The top would obviously have to be dammed off, right, to regulate the levels. Very interesting. So I don't see any puppy comments. I'm just gonna go ahead and comment puppy comment. LOL. All right, guys. If you like this video, go ahead and consider subscribing. Help me get that 100,000 subscriber silver play button. That would be amazing. You guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, take care. Bye.